This is a first for me because this is a game design video. As per the title, I'll be talking about the difference between binary and analog mechanics and goals. Let's start off by defining the terms. A goal is something that a player achieves. A mechanic is something that a player interacts with. The difference between a goal and a mechanic isn't exclusive. If a task rewards you with in-game power, then completion is both a mechanic and a goal. It's a bit foolish to attempt to separate them, but for organizational purposes, I will be. A binary goal is either achieved or not achieved. Winning a game of Hearthstone is an example of a binary goal. A binary mechanic has two states of interaction. This could be lack of or presence of interaction, or it could be two separate ways of interacting. Whether or not you save the game after beating a boss is an example of a binary mechanic. An analog goal has degrees of achievement. When I say degrees, I mean something with infinite possible values. That could be a number that can be arbitrarily large, or a number that can be arbitrarily close to something. However, for all intents and purposes, a lot of possible values is good enough, so I'm going to refer to those as analog as well. The high score in an arcade game is an example of an analog goal. An analog mechanic has degrees of interaction. Aiming in a shooter is an example of an analog mechanic. Now let's go over the advantages and disadvantages of binary and analog. A binary goal gives a clear sense of achievement all at once. This is ideal for giving a player motivation to work towards something in specific. An analog goal gives a continuous drip of sense of achievement and allows a player to measure their magnitude of progress. Because an analog goal is never fully achieved, it provides long-lasting motivation for the player. Analog goals are compatible with player or designer-created arbitrary binary goals at specific points along the analog goal. An achievement that triggers at 100 hours played may not feel as rewarding as more binary grounded achievements, but it still feels more rewarding than its absence. A binary mechanic makes it obvious whether a player can take advantage of it. A better player is clearly better. If the mechanic is sufficiently hard to interact with, then high-level play looks different from low-level play. When a low-level player watches a higher-level player, this makes it harder to follow or believe in their potential to use the mechanic. Binary mechanics introduce a skill floor that communicates to the player they need to practice more. They also introduce a skill ceiling where the player can't get any better. An analog mechanic, like an analog goal, makes difference in skill measurable. Analog mechanics don't have a skill floor or a skill ceiling. Because there's room for infinite optimization, they epitomize easy to learn and hard to master. Analog mechanics make high-level and low-level play aligned, which makes it easy to follow and believe in the possibility of improvement. I recommend a combination of analog and binary mechanics and goals. Goals should be primarily binary to provide peak senses of achievement, but they should be supplemented with analog goals to provide a constant sense of achievement and sense of achievement if the player exceeds expectations. Mechanics should be primarily analog to provide depth and maintain a low skill floor, but they should be supplemented with binary mechanics to keep players interested with variety at different levels of skill. Since we know why we would want to add binary and analog to our game, let's determine how we go about adding them. Binary goals can be created when there's a limited amount of resources. By resources, I mean something like real time, in-game time, health, mana, money, or even building materials. Success can be completion of a task without running out of the resources, accumulating enough of a resource, or it can be intentionally depleting a resource. Proximity or distance can also provide the opportunity for a binary goal. This can be in time, position, or an amount of resource. For timing, this could mean getting close enough to synchronize with an anticipated event, or reacting in time to a QTE. For distance, this could mean getting within a radius, or getting sufficiently far away. Analog goals can be created using unlimited resources. This could be using as few resources as possible, or accumulating as many resources as possible. They can also be created with a measurement of proximity or distance. For timing, this could be synchronizing as much as possible, or reacting as quickly as possible. For distance, this could mean getting as close as possible, or getting as far away as possible. I'm going to separate mechanics into two categories, input methods and decision making. Binary input methods could be whether a button or release happens, or whether a motion control gesture happens. Analog input methods are characterized by finesse. Examples include how long a button is held, when a button is pressed, mouse movement, joystick or analog stick movement, and any form of non-gesture based motion control. Binary decision making is a simple decision of whether to do something. Once you figure out what to do, you can always do it the same way from then on. If the decision is easily solvable, it is binary. Analog decision making might, if one were channeling Sid Meier, be phrased as making an interesting decision. The most obviously analog forms of decision making are consumption of amounts of resources that the player specifies, distribution of resources, and deciding exactly when or where something happens. Other forms come from combinatorial explosion. This is commonly due to the grouping or ordering of a set of objects. The final form comes from risk management in a sea of unknowns. Because every possibility needs to have a contingency plan and an evaluation, the number of things to consider is huge. The important shared property of all these forms is that the choice isn't easily solvable, so heuristics must be created. And to solidify the concept, it's time to mention a bunch of examples. Binary goal examples: getting diamond in League of Legends, winning a game or fight, making or missing a jump or a shot. Analog goal examples: a high score system, the distance the punching bag flies in Smash, an elo system, or a speedrun time. Binary mechanic examples: chess endgame, hitting a note in Guitar Hero, or solving a puzzle. Analog mechanic examples: movement in 3D, aiming, air strafing, gliding, Morphling's attribute shift, positioning in Counter-Strike, chess midgame, what order to buy things in Cookie Clicker. That should be everything you'd want to know about binary and analog goals and mechanics. The only remaining thing to talk about is whether I name them correctly. Alternative choices for binary are digital and Boolean, while the alternative for analog is continuous.